to the lecture given by Professor Stronach. And I'm usually one of the associate directors for the Center for Teaching and Learning Development. And it was yesterday that I was told I have to give an opening remark for this event. So I was deeply surprised because I do not know how to introduce Professor Stronach. However, I do know how to introduce my experience with him. We have been working together since September, and I can tell you that it is one of my best experiences since I came back to NTU to teach from 2015. Okay, I'm very glad that the Office of International Affairs asked me to host Professor Stronach. And I attend his class every week and learn a lot of things from him about Japan, about America, and most importantly about life. So, being American, Professor Stronach, he lived and worked in Japan for decades, and he has to deal with a lot of international students. So he watched the issues of globalization and international employment and mobility very closely. Okay, so without further ado, I would like to give the stage to Professor Stronach, and I can assure you that you will learn a great deal from this very experienced teacher and educator tonight.
Thank you, Professor Lee, and thank you all for coming tonight. I just want to tell you, just to follow up for a minute on Professor Lee's remarks, it's really a pleasure for me to be here at National Taiwan University. I've been to Taipei a couple of times in my life, but I have never lived in Taipei before. I've been to NTU a couple of times in my life, just for a couple of days to do business, but I've never, worked with students and faculty and staff here, and it's just a really great pleasure. I'm really, really happy to be here. And, when I put my original remarks together, when I put this original talk together, I thought most of you were going to be like faculty members and administrators. And I sent it into the office, and they said, no, it's going to be students. So that's great. So I changed a little bit, but I am going to talk about university administration and globalization still, even though you are students, because it's important for you as university students to know how universities operate. Okay, so your house right now in Japanese, are there any Japanese students here, by the way? No? Anybody who is not Taiwanese student? Anybody from another country? Where are you from?
Hong Kong.
Hong Kong?
China.
Okay, great. In Japanese, we talk about the uchi, which is, it can mean a lot of things, including house, but it also means your group, okay? So one of your groups is the university. And universities have a very important role to play, obviously, in your life, but also in globalization. So this is going to be for me in some ways a kind of personal talk, and they have asked me to talk a little bit about my personal life and what I have done in my life as a international educator and administrator. I'm not going to talk too much about my life because I'm sure I'm boring enough as it is, and that would even be more boring. But this talk, and whenever I talk about globalization, and recently I've written a couple of books about globalization, I talk a lot about globalization, because to me it is a very personal issue in a way. And the reason for that is, I'm going to talk about my life and some of the things I've done later in this talk. But one of the things that is a part of my life is I'm really a child of the 1950s and 60s and 70s. So I was born in 1950 and grew up in the United States on a farm in the 1950s and then went to university in the 1960s and went to graduate school in the 1970s. And what's important about those years of the 1950s and the 1960s and the 1970s is that when I was your age, everybody thought that globalization was this kind of unstoppable phenomenon. And yes, in the 1950s and the 60s and the 70s, we also had the Cold War between the Soviet Union and the United States. And so there was always the threat of another global war because of the Cold War. But there was also, through that period after World War II in particular, the idea that there's been enough war. World War I, millions and millions of people died. World War II, millions and millions of people died. So is it impossible for human beings to create an international relations system that isn't based on killing each other? So there was hope. Even though there was a lot of conflict in many places, there was the Cold War, nevertheless, there was a system of international relations developed after World War II based on increased trade, based on multinational cooperation. The EU was formed, ASEAN was formed. So even though there were a lot of negatives, there was this feeling that the world is moving into a positive place. And then in 1990, when the Soviet Union ended, there was even a greater feeling that, the Cold War is over and now the world is really going to be this kind of unified place, and there's going to be more open trade and all of this kind of thing. And actually, unfortunately, that's not what happened. What's happened recently, in the last 10 years or so, is people like Donald Trump and people like Boris Johnson in Britain, Brexit. No, we don't want to be a part of Europe anymore. We want to be ourselves. And if you look around the world, there is a reaction to globalization. And I'm not going to go into why that is and all that kind of thing. All I want to say is the reason I'm talking to you this evening is because we need to develop a generation of young people who understand what globalization is and are able to work with it, cope with it, because there are many negatives about globalization. There are many negatives about globalization. But it's also something that we're not going to stop. Globalization is driven, obviously, in many ways by human decisions, but there are technologies, as we'll see. There are communication technology, transportation technology, information technology, which are growing and growing and growing every day. Right? So we either have to learn how to cope with this world, or the world is going to become a very negative place very quickly. So this is why I believe it's the role of universities today to develop the next generation and the next generation and the next generation of people like yourself, of young people who have a greater understanding of what is happening in the world, what we call globalization, and also how to cope with it. It's not an easy thing to cope with. I understand that, but it's a reality, and it's a reality that we have to deal with. And if we don't deal with it, the alternative to what is happening now is to have the world break up into these little fighting, groups, whether it be nation states or regions, and trade ending and all of these kind of things, which nobody in the end really wants to see. So that's why I'm here to talk to you tonight and to encourage you to be part of that globalized world and to talk to you a little bit about how you can do that. But the first thing I want to talk about is just to say that what's important about where you are, and I encourage you to talk to faculty members or administrators or whomever you talk with about the important thing about where you are right now is that, in my mind, in every society, the most innovative place in that society should be universities. When you talk about creation, when you talk about creating new ideas, creating different ideas, different ways of thinking, looking into the future, it should be universities that lead the way. Now, as Professor Lee said, I'm a Japan guy. I've worked for short times in many different countries, but I've lived in Japan for 36 years and taught at Japanese universities, president of Japanese universities, dean of an American university in Japan. So I spent a lot of time in Japan. And one of the things over the years that I have done is to be, I've been on the board of national universities in Japan, Tsukuba University and Yamagata National University, and giving lectures like this about particularly university administration. And I love Japan. Okay, I love Japan. I love living there. It's a great country. But like any other country, there are problems, and people have to point out what those problems are, and you have to objectively look at them and try to solve the problems. And one of the problems of Japan is that universities don't drive social innovation. In Japan, corporations, the majority of R&D, of research and development, is done in corporations. And there is a lot of reasons for this, but one of the reasons for it is that their universities in Japan they're not competitive enough, they're not open enough to drive the type of innovation that's needed. So, when I look at you as students, you are the reason we're here. You are the reason why the university exists. The university, what do universities do? They teach students and they conduct research, right? Those are the two major things that they do. And the research is really important. But the education of you as the next generation and the generation after you, that is equally important. So what universities have to do is to balance the amount of focus they have on educating you with the need for research as well. But particularly in educating you as the next generation, we should be educating you to think. We should be educating you to communicate. We should be educating you to be innovation. So when I say that universities drive social innovation, it's not just about biochemical research or electronic batteries for EV cars. It's creating people who are innovative. Okay? It is creating people, developing people who can drive Taiwan or China or wherever on to the next level. That's what universities are all about. Yeah. So in order to we're going to talk about study abroad a little bit later, but one of the most important things that I want to get home to you here is overcoming the comfort of staying home. This is a huge problem in Japan. And it has become a big problem in many countries. And the reason is, if you look around the world today, there is a lot of uncertainty as, more and more nationalism grows. There are greater potentials for conflicts. As globalization grows, globalization makes life more complex. It betters your life. You can buy a lot of things from a lot of people. You can, order stuff on Amazon from anywhere in the world, and it comes to your door. And you can watch TikTok videos from Alaska, or you can do all these things, and all of that is great. But it's also made for a very complex world. So when a huge ship gets stuck in the Suez Canal, suddenly the price of your iPhone goes up, right? Because the supply chain is now screwed up. Or COVID is an obvious and really good example of, you have a pandemic in the world, and that affects almost every aspect of what we have been used to in terms of the way the world operates, okay? So, globalization means that, 3 years ago, you can, like in Japan, okay? 3 years ago, people go to Seoul to shop for the day and come back again. Yeah, you fly from Tokyo to Seoul, eat some kimchi, have something really good to eat, do some shopping, and come back in the same day. And the cost of the flight is what? In Japanese yen, it's maybe 40,000 yen or something like that. Pretty cheap, right? And then COVID comes, and all of a sudden, that stops. And so in this world in which, not just because of COVID, but because we have become a little bit concerned about what's happening, then the desire to leave our comforts is one of the worst effects of COVID. And it's one of the effects of globalization as a whole. It's one of the negative effects, because the complexity of globalization creates uncertainty in some ways, all right? So one of my mantras, and this is something in particular to Japanese students, you talk about, because the number of students in Japan who studied abroad in the 2000 teens just plummeted, decreased significantly. Before COVID, we're not talking about COVID, right? We're just talking about 2013, 2014, 2015. And one of the major reasons is, well, I'm too comfortable at home. Why should I go out and put myself in, I don't know, I can't speak English very well. I'm really, hatsukashi. I thought you guys weren't Japanese. How come you understand hatsukashi? but it's a real phenomenon. Okay? And unfortunately, we see that it is not just Japan. So one of the most important things I want to talk to you about is, overcoming that idea of being comfortable at home. If, I'll mix in a little bit about like myself. One of the things I'll say about myself is that this is my third life. Right? This is my third life. I've had 2 lives, and this is my third life. And the end of my second life, I'm not a cat. Well, maybe I am. If I have 6 more, I'll be very happy, believe me. But I retired as Dean of Temple University, Japan, in just 2 years ago, in October of 2020. And I went home to my hometown in the state of Maine in the U.S. It's up there. It's the part of the U.S. that pokes up into Canada. And I have a house on a lake, and it's really nice, and it's my hometown. And, in the wintertime, the lake freezes, and I go cross-country skiing on the lake. And summertime, I can kayak and swim and play golf, and it's a nice house, and I have rose gardens and apple trees and all this kind of stuff. It's really nice. But the problem is, it's too nice. I was going brain dead. Really. Every day is a really nice day, but there was nothing challenging me. And, when I retired, I was 70, and I'm 72 now. And even at this age, it was like, it's like, especially at my age, it was like, I'm waiting to die. What are you doing? Well, I'm just kind of sitting around waiting to die. Like every day you get up and, work on the roses or work on the house or do some kayaking or do, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. But really, it was like my life is over, right? Because, I retired from my job, and that's it. I don't have a job anymore. I have, pensions, money coming in and that kind of stuff. But, I'm not. What am I doing with my life? Well, I don't know. I'm trimming the roses and kayaking and stuff, and that's about it. So that's what I'm telling you, is that for me at 72, so anyways, long story short, this past year I decided I just can't do this anymore. I got to do something, right? And so luckily this is what I'm doing. For those of you who are good English speakers, you will excuse me, but I basically just kicked myself in the butt. Come on, get out of the house, do something, and I'm so happy I did. Okay? And I'm very, in some ways, uncomfortable in Taipei, because I don't speak Chinese. I speak Japanese. I can read. I can't really read Chinese, but I can read Chinese characters, and so I get some understanding of stuff. But I can't speak Chinese, right? And I think, I'm not sure, but I think it's rained every day since I've been here in August. And so this is, I feel like I'm a kid again. I feel like it's 1976 when I went to Tokyo for the first time, and I couldn't speak Japanese, right? The only difference is, the only difference is I was handsome then, but I'm handsome now, so I guess there isn't any difference. But that's what I'm telling you is, don't get sucked into comfort. right? You're too young to be comfortable. You shouldn't be comfortable. You should be doing something that's challenging you, right? That's how we develop our minds. We develop our minds through challenges. We don't develop our minds through comfort, right? And like I said, I mean, just me at 72, God, I got to do something here. I just can't keep being happy every day. I can't keep being comfortable every day. There's got to be something else, right? So my first field of study was social psychology and international relations. And long story short, there is a motive, a psychological motivation, which is the relationship between you and society, called the need for achievement. So people who have high need for achievement tend to be high achievers. So what is it in their head that makes them have a need for achievement? And one of those things is the need to be challenged. The need to have barriers. So if you don't have something stopping you, if you don't have a barrier that you can punch through, then you're not going to develop. You gotta challenge. You gotta go through some pain. You know, we say no pain, no gain, right? You really do need to have something that's going to challenge you, to get you out of your comfort zone, to make you look inside yourself to who you are and what you really want to do and what you are capable of doing. How do you know what you're capable of doing if you don't try something that you're not capable of? Literally. Okay? How do you know how to move forward if you don't fall down, if you don't fail? This is another problem with Japanese society. Japanese society, generally, failure is seen as a negative thing. One of the positives about American society is that failure is seen as a positive thing. If you learn from it. If you learn from it. Okay? If you fail and say, well, screw that, I'm not going to do that again. The heck with that. I'm out of here. I failed. No. Failure is a good thing if you use it to learn. Okay? Analyze, okay, what happened? Why did I do that? And then learn from the experience and go forward and fail again, maybe. And learn from the experience and go forward. So that's what I'm talking about in terms of challenge yourself. The other thing is, certainly hope that National Taiwan University, and I know that Professor Lee is, but there should be educators here who are your role models. And in the school system, I hope that there are people who are creating the motivation for you to be uncomfortable, for you to challenge yourselves long before you get to university, right? Sometimes it's like, if you are, to use an American phrase, if you're stuck in the mud, if you don't want to move, if you don't want to, if you don't want to get out of your, if you don't know it already, a good phrase is comfort zone. If you don't want to get out of your comfort zone, by the time you're in university, maybe it's too late, So these are things which also I'm talking to you, can do for people who are younger than you, brothers, sisters, nieces, nephews, children of your friends, right? We really need to develop in people when they are young these patterns of thought. It's like learning a language. I learned Japanese when I was 26. I started learning Japanese when I was 26. It was awful. I hated it. Because I was 26 years old, and 26 is not a good age to learn a new language, right? Now, if you're 5 years old, it's really easy. Right? All you have to do is just hear it, and and you absorb it really quickly. So it's not just language; it's also our perceptions of life. We develop these ideas at a very young age, and our young minds are flexible. So I want you all to be role models for people who are younger than you, so that your younger brothers or sisters or nieces or nephews or young people who know you will say, oh, wow, they went to France, they went to Kenya, they went to, wherever. Wow, why did they do that? Why did Uncle Bob go to Italy? Well, okay, here's why. Here's why I'm doing it, right? So, like I said, preparing for study abroad really should be happening in middle school and high school. And there are obviously lots of opportunities to study abroad in middle school and high school. My two daughters grew up through elementary school from kindergarten to middle school in Japan as Japanese-speaking kids. They just went to a public Japanese elementary school, and their mother was Japanese, and their friends were Japanese, and their father is too lazy to teach them English. When I get home from work, the last thing I want to do is, this is a pen. Okay? So they were just Japanese kids, Japanese language speakers. But then they went to the U.S. for middle school and high school, and went through ESL and learned English. But it's when they were in middle school and high school in the U.S. in Boston. One of them studied in Mexico. I made them have a third language. So obviously Japanese and English, but I also made them have a third language, whatever language they wanted. And one of them picked Spanish, so she spent one semester of high school in Mexico City, and the other one chose French, so she spent one semester of high school in France, in Paris. So, there's plenty of opportunities for young people to develop this idea that we need to get out and get into a different place, even before undergraduate school. One other thing is I'm a huge fan of gap year. Okay? When I say that I had 3 lives, the end of my first life was in the fall of, actually, very specifically, December 1969. And December 1969, well, it wasn't the end of my first life, it was the beginning of the end of my first life. Because in December 1969, I got kicked out of university. For those of you who don't know about American universities, what happens in American universities is that if you don't do well, they kick you out, right? And they keep your money. They don't give you your money back. This is, this is not Uniqlo or, they don't return your money if you didn't do well. They keep your money. And when I was a kid, I was a very good athlete, and I had a very good time. I had a good life. I was pretty good at parties and enjoyed life a lot. And when I went to Boston University, and at Boston University, I enjoyed life a great deal. And I enjoyed life so much that after my third semester, they told me, we're kicking you out because you're enjoying life too much and you're not concentrating on your studies, right? So after I left Boston University, or was kicked out, I spent 3 years doing a lot of different things. I enlisted in the Navy, and I worked in factories and truck driver, and worked in the woods, and then, I was living in the woods, overseeing this operation of I don't know how to explain it. It's pulp and paper operation, just people cutting the trees down, and I'm making sure that they're doing it in the right way and all this, and I'm living in a cabin in the middle of the woods, and I'm 21 years old, and I thought, okay, time to grow up, time to be an adult, time to go back to college and, start my life. So that was the start of my second life when I was like 21, 22. So when I talk about a gap year, if I had taken a gap year between high school and university, I probably wouldn't have been kicked out of university. I probably would have had the chance to think about what it is I really want to do. Or maybe for me, it would have, I was a pretty irresponsible kid, so mine had taken 3 years for me. But the point is that some of us know exactly what they want to do. My brother, who's older than I am, and is a medical doctor, he's retired, when my brother was in high school, he knew he wanted to be a medical doctor. And he became a medical doctor. That was the focus of his life from the time he was in high school. So that's great. If you know what you want to do, if you really know what you want to do, go for it. That's great. But there are a lot of 17-year-old kids or 18-year-old kids in the world who don't have a clue what they really want to do. Right? They may know what their parents want them to do, or they may know what their friends want them to do, or what have you, but inside their heads, they don't really know what they want to do. So university, serves a lot of purposes, but you've got to have a little bit of maturity before you go to university. Or even take a gap year between university and graduate school. So one thing that and believe me, many people in many universities, especially when I was president of a university, hate it when I say this, and many parents hate it when I say this. But the worst thing you can do with your life is to enter kindergarten and exit with a PhD. Because when you do, this is not true of all people, because a lot of people work, seriously when they're in university. When I was in college, when I went back to college, I put myself and my wife. I worked a full-time job. I worked 8 hours a day while I was going to college. So if you're like that, then okay, you know what the real world is. But if you're a person who doesn't have to support themselves and pay their own tuition, and you enter kindergarten and you go to school until you get a PhD, that's a bad thing. And it's a bad thing because you're going to be 28 years old and you're not going to know anything about the world. You're not going to know anything about what real life, what working people are like, right? what it's really like to make a living in this world, to survive sometimes in this world. When my wife and I, no, I'm like, never mind. Anyways, when my wife and I were at this small college in New Hampshire where I graduated, Keene State College, you know, we got government food. We were so poor. Right? So, you know, it's good to know those kinds of things. And this goes back to, you know, relating to study abroad. It's good to know things like that. It's good to know how hard life is. It may be really hard for you at the time that it's happening, but later in life, those are lessons that are really going to give you perspective on what life is about. You know, when people say, oh, you know, life is so tough, like, no, it's not really. Because you could actually be, you know, working in a construction site in the rain and making very little money and going back, you know, going home to a really crappy house in a bad neighborhood with the fear of having an earthquake knock your building over. That, you know, if you're in that situation, life's pretty crappy. But if, you know, life's crappy because the coffee was cold, or, you know, because you have a class at 3 o'clock, oh, gee, I got a class at 3 o'clock on Friday afternoon. God, life sucks. This is bad, you know. So, you know, you get, what you have to do is to develop a perspective on life is what I'm talking about. So a part of this is, you know, when we talk about globalization, this is what we're talking about. What's globalization? Globalization is trade, it's politics, and it's driven by technology. So this is one of the most important things here is that, you know, globalization as we know it now, unless, you know, we really allow some kind of huge catastrophic disaster to occur, it's not going to stop. And the reason it's not going to stop is because the technology which drives it, in essence, creates itself. You know, the increases in scientific and technological knowledge and engineering knowledge, the way that knowledge grows so rapidly over time and exponentially. The more rapid it grows, the more rapid it grows, the more rapid it grows, right? And these technologies, communication technology, information, transportation, artificial intelligence, they're what drives. They are the drivers of globalization. And nobody's going to stop those unless the world explodes and, you know, we lose all of our technology and, you know, climate change burns us all up, or, you know, there's a nuclear holocaust or something. Unless those things happen, then those technologies are going to continue to develop. So what I'm talking about is you having to develop an understanding of how to live in this world, of how to deal with this. Because as I said, there are many aspects of globalization which are not easy to deal with. And the most important thing I haven't even put up there. The most important thing is, who are you? I'm asking you, this is a serious question. You can take off your mask if you want to, for a second, if you want to. Who are you?
I'm a college student who's studying history.
Okay, anything else?
I'm the daughter of my mom and dad.
Okay, anything else? Who aren't you? Who aren't you?
I'm not a man.
You're not a man. Okay, obvious, yeah.
I'm not a person who loves to eat coriander.
Okay, that's pretty specific. All right, what I'm getting at here is it's the largest eraser I've ever seen in my life. That's all right. The thing that makes or breaks globalization, technology creates globalization. It produces globalization. But one of the basic lessons of life is that nothing happens without human beings. Okay? These technologies were created by human beings. They impact human beings, but the decisions on how to use them are made by human beings. So what I always say to my international relations class is that, when Japan and the United States have a relationship, a bilateral relationship, a rock in the United States is not talking to a tree in Japan, right? Japan and the US do not have relations. Japanese and Americans have relations. It takes human beings. International relations is the international communication between human beings. Okay? Planes don't talk to each other, ships don't talk to each other, human beings talk to each other. And so the basis of globalization is identity. Who are you? How do you identify? Whether it's your nation or your religion or your city or your family or whatever it is, everybody identifies as something. I'm somebody in this group, right? And you identify yourself as a member of that group. Yeah, and also as an individual. But as individuals, we're all members of groups, and we all see ourselves as the member of the soccer team or the, a member of the religion or whatever it is. So the real question for the world, and this is a little crazy in a sense, but I'm really serious about this, is can you identify with every other human being in the world? So my question is, you guys are sitting right in front of me, you're too easy. You. Yeah. Do you identify as a human being? No, you don't. I will bet you don't. It's easy to say, oh yeah, I'm a human being. Yeah, you're a human being, I know that, you know that, but you don't identify as one. Do you wake up in the morning and think, I'm a human being? No, you don't. Do you wake up in the morning and say, oh, I'm a student at NTU? Yeah, you do that. Do you wake up in the morning and you look at your social media and you're some Facebook group or Line group or whatever? Yeah, you do that. But you don't wake up in the morning and say, oh, I'm a human being. I'm on my Line group is every human being in the world. Oh, that's great, We don't identify as human beings. We know we're human beings. We live as human beings, but we don't identify as human beings. That's the point. So, can you identify as a human being? Because that's what globalization means. Communication technology, information technology. Information technology is the hardware. Communication technology is the software, like algorithms or smartphone apps, whatever it is you use, Line, Facebook, Insta, whatever it is you use, that's the communication technology, Skype, Zoom, etc. So those communication technologies literally give you the ability to communicate with almost everybody in the world. Not everybody, there are obviously places in the world where there are not smartphones, but basically you can communicate with everybody in the world if you wanted to, but can you identify with them? Do you have the mental capability to actually think of yourself as a member of the human race, as that's your group, that's your uchi? Okay? Probably not. But this is what is going to have to happen. This is how we're going to have to evolve. So, one of the best things that could happen to, do you all know the movie Independence Day? Anybody? American movie from 10 years ago, something like that, whatever it is. More than 10, yeah, right. It's got to be like 2099, something like that. Anyways, the point is, it's a humorous movie about an invasion from Mars. That's what the world needs. The world needs an invasion from Mars. Because if we're invaded from Mars, everybody on Earth is going to identify as a human being. Literally. Because one of the most important things about identifying is identifying yourself against somebody. What we call the other. Okay, there's us and then the other. And the other is who or not. I'm not like him. I'm not a member of that group. Oh, you're a member of that group? Oh, no, I don't like that group. So, we have, in order to create our identities have to be who we are and who we're not. And if we are invaded from Mars, suddenly there is a non-human group that we're not. I guess we could pick cows, I guess, or whales or something. But the point is that there is nothing which is going to unify us as human beings to the extent of identifying, because we really don't have the capability of really identifying as a human being, as a group. There may be some people who literally have the ability to do that, but most of us, we don't identify as humans. But that's what we're talking about. Can you have the ability, okay, to really empathize with everybody else in the world as a human being? So I won't go through all of this, but there are a couple of points here. One of them is, this idea of diversity. So when we talk about global education and creating a sense of yourself as a human being, that has to do with what we call empathy. So this is what's really important in study abroad. Is the ability to understand others. Others, those people out here who are not you, who are not in your group. So what I always tell students when I teach about intercultural relations is it's okay not to like people. You don't have to like everybody. Nobody likes everybody in the world, right? Yeah, I don't like you. Black mask. Yes. Who wears a black mask? Ugh. It's okay not to like people. Right? So when you get out of your comfort zone and you go to another country, you go to another culture, don't expect that you're supposed to like everything. You don't, right? This is in the Chinese context. In one time in my life, I spent a fair amount of time in Beijing and Harbin. How many years ago? 22, 23 years ago. Back in the late 90s and early 2000s, I spent a lot of time in Beijing and Harbin. And I can't tell you how much I dislike eating the feet of chicken. Who the hell eats the feet of chicken? And then when they're drinking, sitting there like spitting the bones out, ting, chewing on there's still a little bit of bone that hasn't been dissolved yet. So, ting, drink again. It's awful. This is disgusting. As far as I'm concerned, I hate it. Right? But even though I don't like it, the point about not liking something, okay? You pray 5 times a day. Why do you pray 5 times a day? What the hell is that? And to the east, what's the difference? So all of that kind of thing, it's fine to question or to not like, as long as you do 2 things. The first thing is to look inside yourself and ask yourself, why don't I like that? Think about it. Take a minute to think about, okay, my immediate reaction to that was like, ooh, that's gross, or I don't like that. Why? Why did you have that reaction? That's number one. And number 2 is, why do people do that? Why do people eat chicken's feet? Why do people act I'm thinking when I was dean of the International University of Japan, not Temple, but previously, years before that, I was dean of a graduate school in Japan called the International University of Japan. And there are students from, particularly from developing countries, who we gave scholarships to. And you would get these letters from students from Africa or from India, and the letters were always like, I was the best soccer player in my high school, and I was the best this, and I was the best that, and it's always like everything they do is always the best. And I used to think, come on, why are you pushing yourself forward like this? And the answer, so I literally had to think about it, and I realized the answer is because if you grow up in a village of 500,000 people in India, and everybody's poor, in order to get anything done, you've got to elbow other people out of the way. You've got to push yourself forward. You got to constantly push yourself forward. If that's the environment you grew up in, then if you don't do that, you die. It's like you know, literally, this is true. It's like wolves in the wild. When a female wolf gives birth to a litter, the puppies fight to get the milk. And the puppies who can't fight to get the milk, they die, literally, right? Because it's the puppies who are better at fighting to get the milk, they get stronger, and gives them even more ability to fight against the weak ones to get more milk. So in some cultures, that's the way life is. You know, you live in a developing country, you come from a place that's really poor, there's a lot of people there, there's not a whole lot of opportunity, there's not a whole lot of resources. If you don't fight for it, you don't get it. So that kind of behavior, we can see that kind of behavior as being impolite, obnoxious, negative in a lot of ways, but there's a reason for it. So that's what I'm talking about in terms of empathy and globalization and identification. Do you have the ability to understand why you don't like something, and do you have the ability to understand why people do things that you don't like? That's what's liking it is not important. If you like it, that's great, that's easy. All right. What's difficult is what is important, and it goes back to the comfort zone thing. What is difficult is important. What is difficult is what you learn from. Yeah? So the diversity is obviously important, of putting yourself in contact with people who are different from you, consciously making the effort to be with people who are different than you. And your university should be helping you do that. Your university, and I'm not talking about NTU, I'm talking about any university anywhere in the world, they should be, that university should be attempting to get in as, you know, a diverse student body. Right now in the United States, there is a big debate going on over just this. So, you know, when people apply for a university, do you only judge them on their intellectual merits? Or do you also judge them on their background, so that you get people into the university of different backgrounds, different races, different religions, so that when you're in the classroom, you're hearing from people who are different than you. You are hearing from people who have the experience of being Chinese, or you have the experience of being a Black American, or you have the experience of being Hispanic American, you know, Mexican heritage, whatever it is. So the argument, you know, one side of the argument is no, it's just the most intelligent people should be the ones that we bring in. And the other side of the argument is no, what students really need is to interact with people who are not like them, to develop their minds in order to develop empathy when in contact. Because at some point in life, hopefully, we're going to come into contact with people who are not like us. So do you have that ability to adjust your thinking? Do you have that ability to deal with people outside your comfort zone? So in American education is based on a liberal arts model. And liberal arts is all about three things: knowledge, critical thinking, and communication. And the idea that if you know something, whatever, you learn something in class, you know something. It has no meaning whatsoever unless you know how to analyze that information. We call it critical thinking. Okay? So if you have a piece of knowledge, then you have to look at that knowledge and say, okay, is this true? Is it not true? Why is it true? Why isn't it true? Be critical in your thinking. And then even if you do that, it's meaningless unless you know how to communicate it. Because if there's something inside your head and you don't know how to get it out of your head and into the head of somebody else, it's meaningless, right? So this idea of knowing, analyzing, and communicating, that really should be the basis of education. And also, to me, undergraduate education is all about learning how to be an adult. So as undergraduates, you're studying whatever it is you're studying, and that's good. But whatever you're learning, when you graduate from university, if you don't know how to be an adult, then what good does your knowledge do you? And when I say you don't know how to be an adult, what I mean is be a responsible person, to take responsibility. That's the difference between a child and an adult. We don't expect children to be responsible for what they do. They're children. So, they're not responsible. They don't have the social skills. They don't have the knowledge and whatever. They're children. But when you're an adult, you should be responsible for what you do. And so that's what universities should instill in you, is how to be responsible, to take responsibility for what you do. So what we talk about is good citizens, meaning that when you graduate from university, you should know what your role in society is, and you should want to do something in society, what we call civic participation. And it doesn't mean political necessarily, it can, but do you participate in your society? Do you vote? Do you belong to a political party? Do you, is there a cause that you work for, volunteer for, climate change, whatever it is? Be a good citizen. Be a responsible person in your society. That's what we should be educating you to do. And in a global world, a good citizen is a global citizen. That doesn't mean that whatever your nationality, that you are no longer proud of being whatever your nationality is. We can have more than one identity. It means being proud of your nationality and also understanding how to be a global citizen. So one of the important things here is who controls information. Yeah? So when we talk about globalization, one major element of that is our constant connectivity to the world and to all the information out there in the world through our smartphones or through our tablets or whatever it is. So, this is one of the complexities of the world these days. See, that guy's like me. I'm better looking than he is. I got more hair. I definitely have more hair than he has. But back in the day, when I was your age, who controlled information? I did. Your professors, right? You're the student, I'm the professor, I know what I'm talking about, you don't know what you're talking about, that's why you're here. I'm teaching you whatever it is that I'm teaching you, okay? But these days, where do you get your information? You get your information from Elon Musk, right? Good luck with that. So there are so many different media of communication, channels of communication that, the bald guy and I can't control information in the way that we used to be able to. So it's what I call the democratization of information, which leads to, a question which is democracy a good thing? What do you mean by democracy? So if democracy means that every single person in the world has the ideas and opinions of everybody in the world have equal value, and everybody in the world has an equal ability to post those opinions and ideas, then I'm telling you democracy is a bad thing. Because everybody in this world, their opinions and their ideas are not equal. I'm sorry, they're not. If somebody is telling me, there is, nobody knows if this is an actual conspiracy theory or somebody created it as a joke, but there is like this conspiracy theory in the United States that there are no such thing as actual birds, that all the birds in the world now are robots from outer space, okay? Literally, and I'm not kidding you, this is actually a conspiracy theory. So, think about it. If I post that we really have to be careful, the aliens are going to take over because all the birds in the world are little alien robots, is that idea equal to the fact that birds are birds? No, it's not. I'm sorry, no, it's not, right? So this is the problem with the democratization of information, is we have to have the literacy to determine what's right and what's wrong, right? Which is obviously not always easy to do. But one of the really interesting things to me, and this goes to your connection to the rest of the world, is my generation, we talk about, let me use the big one. There we go. Whoa, okay, good. Mediated communication. Mediated communication means any communication that comes through a media like television, radio, social media. That's mediated communication as opposed to face-to-face. So for my generation, when you talk about creating groups, who's a member of the group or not a member of the group, it was unmediated communication. It's face-to-face communication. Because, I didn't start using the internet as a regular thing until I was 40 years old. Okay? But you all, you have lived on mediated communication since you can remember, right? You've always had a smartphone or a tablet or whatever the heck it is. So the interesting thing, and this is just a question, I have no answer to it, is whether your generation can actually create these sort of global groups, feeling to be a member of a group with other people who are outside Taiwan, or, their definition is being a member of a social media group, not a human being that you're actually, can see and talk to, whether or not the strength of that bond, can be almost equal, because in your life, that's been your communication, mediated communication, as much as face-to-face communication. So, to get back to study abroad, I mean, this is what we're talking about. Like I said, getting out of your comfort zone, learning. You can all, I hope, understand what I'm saying, so that's great. You all have 2 languages. Empathy and understanding. On a practical level, however, is financing. So if you study abroad, who's going to pay for that? Are you paying for it? Is the university paying for it? Are you on an exchange program? So there are practical elements of study abroad that we have to think about. And the other is credit transference of the credits that you have from this university. Can you transfer them to the university you're going to? Can you transfer those credits back if you're coming back? So you do have to think about, these practical things. And when is the best time? In the US, generally, we think about the 3rd year as the best time because in most American universities, you determine what you are going to major in at the end of your 2nd year. So that means that you know what you're going to major in, but in your 4th year, you're getting ready for the job, right? To go get a job or to go to graduate school or whatever it is. So basically in the US, we think about the 3rd year as the kind of sweet spot. And then, like I said before, there are, without getting into a lot of detail, there are really large differences between the fundamental way in which education is delivered in most Asian universities in Japan and South Korea, in China, in Taiwan. There are big differences between that and the way in which education is delivered in the West. So if you do study abroad in the United States or in Great Britain or in somewhere in the West, you do have to be aware. You do have to prepare yourself for what that experience is going to be. So study abroad, what is the importance to you? I've been talking about, globalization and how, everywhere around the world, we need to develop young people who have the ability to operate in a global world. But again, from a practical point of view, preparing you for your life's work. Think about, whoever you go to work for, whether you go to work for a government, definitely, but also if you go to work for a corporation, then even more and more small and medium-sized enterprises need to be connected to the global economy, or they're not going to make it, right? And that's certainly true for larger companies as well. So more and more companies really need to hire people who have some sort of international or global experience. And this is, it's really amazing in Japan. In the early and mid 2010s, I was an advisor to the Japanese American Government Commission on Education and Cultural Exchange, called CULCON. So we were noting at that time the decrease in Japanese students going to the United States for study abroad. It had been for decades and decades pretty high, and then it started dropping off. So we were looking at that and wondering why that was occurring. So one of the things I was looking at was, if you're a Japanese student and you study abroad, what is the relationship of that to your prospects for a job, when you graduate from university. And up until the early 2010, what I found was that Japanese HR people, the human relations manager, the people who hire for the company, they didn't want people who had been abroad. They didn't. What they wanted was Japanese, right? Because that's what the company had always had. And Japanese companies have really definable personalities. They have definable management cultures. So what a Japanese company wants you to be is a manager in their culture. And those cultures tended to be Japanese cultures, right? So like I said, one of my favorite, being who I am, one of my favorite Japanese expressions is, and see if you know this, Japanese, gaijin kusai, means you smell like a foreigner. So if you're Japanese, but you act like a foreigner, you're gaijin kusai, means you smell like a foreigner. So they wanted people who were, could act like Japanese, understand, be like Japanese. But after 2013, that really changed. And now Japanese companies are looking for Japanese employees who are global. Why? Because Japanese companies understand that if they're not in the global market, they're going to die. And in order to be in the global market, they have to hire people who understand how to work in the global market. So for all of you, it's true here too. You have to learn how to live in the global market. You have to learn how to work in the global market. And obviously studying abroad is one of the best ways of doing that. So as I said, the key is empathy, okay? To understand others. This is the key. For all of the technical knowledge that you may have, for all of the business knowledge you may have, the key is actually understanding how other people work. And as I said, it's really important for you to, for everybody to develop this when you are young. And another important thing here is to develop inside yourself a strong responsibility for ethics and morality, and then bring it with you out into the world. So the point here is inside you. Your life comes from inside out. You can't do any of these things until you do it inside yourself. That's the key. You have to look inside yourself. You have to develop yourself. And this isn't being selfish. It's that if you're not comfortable with yourself, you're not going to be comfortable doing anything else. All right? So developing this sense of empathy, of responsibility, of ethics and morality, your first job is to develop it inside yourself. Your second job is then to bring it with you out into the world. This is really, really, really important. Okay, so just a wee bit about myself. Miyuchi no gaijin, oyobi hen na gaijin. Hen na gaijin, this is very Japanese, okay? Hen, is that the same in Chinese, the hen character? What does that mean in Chinese? Does it mean strange? Pardon? Change. Oh, okay. In Japanese, it means strange, right? So, hen na Nihonjin means a strange Japanese. Strange Japanese means somebody who understands foreigners. And a strange foreigner is a foreigner who understands Japanese. So in Japan, if you understand Japan and you're not Japanese, you're strange. And if you're Japanese and you understand stuff outside Japan, you're strange. So we call it hen nagaijin. So the point is that I'm really a lucky person. This is the last slide. These are some of the places I've worked. Tokyo, Boston, Graz in Austria, Istanbul, Beirut. I've lived in Boston, lived in Tokyo, but I've also done some work in Graz and Beirut and Istanbul, consulting with universities. So really, I'm a lucky guy, and I often say that both my grandfather and my father were in the Navy in World War II when the United States was fighting the Japanese. So during World War II, if somebody said, your son and your grandson is going to be president of a Japanese university, they would have thought, oh, we lost the war? We're going to lose the war, right? I mean, my grandparents, my parents, would never in their wildest dreams have ever thought that their son was going to be president of a Japanese university, right? So that's why I say I've had a couple of lives. And my first life was growing up on a farm in rural America and rural Maine, and not just like when I dropped out of, or when I was kicked out of college, but since I was a little kid, I've worked my whole life. There was a woolen mill in the town that I grew up in. I've worked in the woolen mill. I have driven moving van trucks for Mayflower moving vans. I've worked as an auctioneer. Do you know auctioneers, the antique business? I got a pen right here. It's going to be, you're going to give it all, give me it all, give me it all. I got a pen here, give me it all. Where? I used to do that for a living. I've done a lot of things in my life. And the first job I ever had that was not manual labor, not working with my hands, was when I was 25 years old in graduate school and working on a research project. So that was my first life. And then my second life was in academics. And I was working on a graduate, when I was at the Fletcher School in Keio University in Tokyo had a joint research project. And the joint research project was about how we how do we create our image of others. So we were talking about US, Japan, and can we make films that make you have a bad image of Japan? Can we make films that make you have a good image of Japan? What is it I can do to psychologically create your image of other countries? So we were working on this. The research project was Keio in Tokyo and the Fletcher School in Boston, and I was working on that research project. And so the woman who was the head of the project at Keio said to me, Bruce, would you like to come to Keio and continue this research only in Tokyo? So, I was 26 years old, I was blonde, and I was stupid. And I thought, why not? I got nothing else to do with my life. So, yeah, sure. So I went to Tokyo. I had no plans of going ever to Tokyo in my life. I never thought I would be going to Japan or Tokyo, but yeah, hey, why not? You know, I got nothing else to do. So I went to Tokyo, and then eventually I joined the faculty at Keio University, and then I developed my life in Japan. So that was my second life. And then, like I said, my third life is right now. But the point I want to make to you about that is it's not just about living internationally. The point about it is kind of let life happen to you. Some people, like my brother, who, he says he's the real doctor. I'm not a real doctor. I have a PhD, right? Okay. Every time I say, oh yeah, I'm a doctor, he goes, yeah, you're not a doctor. I'm a doctor. So some people like my brother who know what they want to do, they know what they want to do, and that's great. That's fine. Okay. But most people are not like that. And so we think about, what am I going to do? I'm going to do this. Well, sometimes you have to lay back a little bit and let life happen to you, right? It happens. Opportunities happen. Opportunities arise. Sometimes you got to lay back, relax a little bit, and let life happen to you. But when life does happen to you, then do it. Don't hesitate. Like I said, don't worry about failing. Whatever it is, if that opportunity arises, don't worry about failing. Even if you do fail, don't worry about failing. Okay? So this is, it's not just about study abroad and all this kind of thing, but, again, in English, we say, when the door opens, walk through it. And then find out what's on the other side after you get there. Might be a tiger, the tiger and the ladies, the old story about, who's behind the door. Could be a tiger behind the door, could be a beautiful woman or a handsome guy or whatever it is, or a pile of money. But don't worry about what's behind the door until after you go through, because if you don't go through the door, you're never going to find out what's behind the door, right? And the other thing is to, be yourself, relax, enjoy life. The biggest criticisms I've had as a university president and as an administrator, as a dean, is that I have too much fun. As far as I'm concerned, I am now, and I have always been, just this kid from a farm in Maine. That's who I am. I like being that, right? And I've done other things with my life. I do all these things in my life, but that's who I am. And in Japan, for example, it's, you go through a period when you're living in a foreign country, sometimes you can go through a period of sort of self-doubt and what we in English call an identity crisis. Somebody laughing at me? So identity crisis, wait a minute, who am I? What am I supposed to be an American? Or am I supposed to be Japanese? So, as that foreigner on the inside, it's like, who am I? What am I? And it happens to everybody, and it's normal for it to happen. So the most important thing, whether you're living in a foreign country or wherever you are, is knowing yourself. Self-awareness, self-knowledge, self-confidence, self. And it's not selfish. It's not selfish. It's knowing who you are. It's confidence, self-confidence, self-knowledge, self-awareness. So if you know who you are and you're comfortable with who you are, then you be who you are. So this is what I came to learn as an outsider inside, particularly when I was president of Yokohama City University, which the whole job was in Japanese. I'm president of a big public university. Everybody's expecting these things of me. You know, a lot of pressure. But the thing that saved me in a sense is just, hey, I'm going to be who I am. You know, I'm me, I'm Bruce, and I'm going to be Bruce, and I'm going to do Bruce. So, you know, when I bicycled to the university, and the guard man went like, oh, the president's bicycling? Right? You know, because I had a car and driver. You know, I had a car and driver to take me around, but it's a nice day. I don't live that far away. I want to bicycle. I don't need to take a car, so I bicycle. And the guard looks at me like, what? You can't do that. If you do that, if you be who you are, but at the same time recognize there are times when it's appropriate for you to play the role. Faculty members should be good actors. University presidents should be good actors because we have to know when to play the role. So as a foreigner in Japan, I speak the language fairly well, but more than the language, I know how to be Japanese. So this is not a joke. This is actually true. One of the times when I really realized, oh, damn, I'm turning Japanese, is when I bowed on the telephone. I'm by myself. I'm talking on the telephone. I'm by myself. And, hi. わかりました。はい、かしこまりました。はい、わかった。はい、はい、どうも。はい、失礼します。And really, oh, holy shit. I'm bowing on the phone. But when you are in a meeting, when you're a university president, you are expected to do certain things. You're expected to act in certain ways. And sometimes you should say, no, I'm not going to do that. So open campuses, when the students come in to, think about whether they want not to go to that school, the first one I was at Yokohama City University, I said, okay, well, what do you want me to do? And they said, oh, no, the president doesn't do this. And I said, yes, the president does this. The president is the representative of the university. So I went down and I was an American president and, so you take a mother and her daughter who's in high school is thinking about coming to the university. So you go up to the mother and you say, oh, are you thinking of coming to, oh, you're the mother? Oh, I thought you were coming to the university. I thought you were a sister. You're just like, oh, yeah. So doing stuff like that when it is appropriate, but also when it is appropriate to be Japanese. So when you're in a meeting with other, Japanese faculty members or whatever, to act like a president, act like they expect you to act. So knowing how to do that, that's the key. But it starts with being comfortable. You can't do that if you're not comfortable with yourself. If you're questioning what your identity is, then you can't do that. I guess that's about really one of the things I guess I want to say is you really enjoy what you're doing, even the stress. I love stress. I do. It's like it's like a drug. I love stress because it gets me going, it gets me energized and exercise. So if you don't like stress, that's fine. Whatever. Just, whatever it is you're doing, if you're expected to do that and you don't like doing it, don't do it. Don't live up to other people's expectations. whatever it is that you want to do, be comfortable with yourself, right? Be who you are and know how to act as you're supposed to act in other situations, even though you may not normally act that way. When you have to act, act. That's fine. But basically, be who you are, be comfortable with who you are, and enjoy what you do. That is really, really, really important. So I'll leave it there. And questions?
Hi, I'm a senior student, and I will graduate next year. And before I enter the job market, I have a half year of gap year, a half of gap year. So I'm curious about what's your recommendation for me to do in this half of gap year.
Okay. My advice to you would depend upon a lot of things. First, what is your circumstances? Do you have the ability to fund whatever it is that you want to do? Okay. So that's obviously important. Money is important. Okay. There's just no getting around it. Money is important. So if you have the ability to fund whatever it is that you want to do, without knowing so if I'm giving advice, don't take my advice because I don't really know you. But what I would say is that if you really know the job that you're going to enter, okay, if you know what that job is and you understand that you know how to do that job and you're looking forward to it and all of that kind of thing, then I would say relax. Whatever it is that you do that you find to be relaxing, that you enjoy, mountain climbing, going to the beach, riding your bicycle, traveling to a country you've never been before, just do that. Just, turn your mind off for a bit. And, again, in English, the term we use is energize your batteries, right? Plug in, energize your batteries, and get ready for that job so that when you get on that job, you're going to be ready for it. You did what you wanted to do. You're a young guy, so when you start your job, people are going to expect you to be energetic and really go at it and maybe work long hours and that kind of stuff. So if that's the case, take that time to enjoy yourself, charge your batteries, and get ready for what you're going to do.
My question is, when I'm talking about I'm preparing to study abroad, and the people around me, and including me, will have a question is, will I come back to my land, and what will I do after I study abroad? So I'm curious about when will I know I'm enough, or is the best timing for me to come back to my country or to my land?
Okay, I don't think there is an easy answer for that, other than, a combination of factors. For one thing is, what responsibilities do you have back here? Do you have responsibilities to your parents? Do you have, maybe you have somebody you're in a relationship with who, is waiting for you to come back, and, do you want to go back to that or not? So, what are your responsibilities here, okay? And so that question is all about not what you want to do, but what you should do, okay? So there's what you want to do, and there's what you should do. And, hopefully, most of the time, those two things are the same thing, but they're not always the same thing. So that's the one thing is, what is it back here that you should be doing that you can't do unless you come back? And how strong is that? How important is that? And then the other is you. You go to another country and you're studying in that country, and you think, wow, I really like it here. you know, for whatever reasons, I like living here better than I like living in Taipei, then live there, you know. I mean, seriously, this is what I mean about being global. What the hell? You know, it's this is, I know, you know, none of us have evolved to the point where we really, really can feel this. But at 72 years old, having been an American my whole life, and during the time I'm in Japan, you know, I'm an American, right? You know, literally people would come up to me and say, "Oh, I see your space shuttle blew up, huh?" Yeah. Well, no, I mean, it wasn't mine. I didn't own it. I didn't design it. But so, you know, I'm an American in Japan. I'm an American in Japan. I'm an American here. But at 72 years old, you know, more and more I feel now, you know, I don't care about being an American. You know, I like America. I like where I live in my house, and that kind of thing. But, you know, if I'm living in another country or I'm living, you know, wherever I'm living, you know, why the hell do I have to be an American? You know, why can't I just be a human being living where I'm living, right? So, you know, none of us have really evolved to that level, really. But, you know, everybody has a national identity, okay? But what I'm saying to you is don't let that get in the way of you where you want to live. If you want to live in some place that is not Taiwan, live in that place. If you're comfortable there, if you like it there, and then you'll know, like I said, it's all inside us. You'll know if, well, you know, I really want to go home. Okay, if this is home and, you know, that's what you develop in your head, you know, as your home, then at some point you're going to want to go back there. But if you're comfortable living in a different place and, you know, you like it there, then stay there, be there. You know, what's wrong with that? Nothing. Other than if you have personal responsibilities, then you have to think about, like I said, what you should be doing and what you want to do. But if you want to do it, do it.
Okay, good evening. I'm a freshman in this university, and I have some intentions to study abroad. But I'm really afraid that there are a lot of challenges, and I have a lot of peer pressure. And wonder whether I can outperform my peers and get a chance, or can I imagine get a chance to go to get abroad? I'm really nervous about that. Right. So just like life is full of uncertainty, and I want to ask, is that really necessary, or can I really get a chance to immerse myself in a foreign environment?
Right. Okay. All right. And you also had a question, right? Yeah. So just hold on to that. You asked next. Okay. All right, so the point is, and this is, again, something that I can say in U.S. universities all the time without a problem, and but in Japanese and other universities, maybe NTU, people are not going to like my answer to you, okay? So my answer to you is, if just hold it away from the computer, yeah. If you really want to study abroad, right? Then at NTU, there are all kinds of exchange programs, 2+2 programs, all of that kind of thing. So just, look for what programs exist, and then folks, you're only a freshman, right? So you got time to focus and go for it. The alternative is leave NTU and go to the United States and apply to a university. If you really want to do it, that's what you do. Okay, so that's what, a lot people maybe don't want me to say that, but this is one of the great things about American universities is that, nobody cares if you leave university and go to another place. A vast number of people who enter universities every year are entering from another university. Yeah? It's very fluid. And that's what we talk about in terms of diversity. It's not just skin color, it's not just religion, it's not just nation, it's the way you think. So having people moving in and out of universities, you study at one university for 2 years, you leave that university, you go to another university, faculty member is at this university for 5 years, quits, goes to another university. That's good, because it means that ideas are moving around. Right? So it's a good thing that people leave their job and take another job. It's a good thing that people leave university and go to another university. Now, you don't want everybody to do it, right? But a certain percentage of that, what we call mobility. Okay? So mobility is a part of diversity. So what I would say to you is, see what is available here, right? And if there are exchange programs or dual degree programs or whatever it is that you're really interested in, find out what you have to do to get it and go for it. But there's another path, and that path is quit NTU and go to École de Politique in France, or go to a university in the United States, or go to a university in Japan, or whatever it is. That's available to people to do that. So in Asian universities, people hate it when I say this, but it is what makes American universities so good, is that they're open. We call, do you know what permeable means? Permeable means, like in chemistry, molecules going through. American universities are permeable, easy to leave and get in and go into another. People are always moving around, and that's a form of diversity, and it's a good thing. Yeah. So, and I'm sure your parents are going to kill me for saying that. Yeah.
First, I want to thank you for your amazing speech, Mr. Bruce. And my question is concerning about being separated with my family. I believe your job or plan on being mobile will certainly have some impact on their life or their career. So how did you and your partner or your family figure out this problem together?
Okay. There's two answers to that. Okay. One of them is, again, this is not just an American thing, but also a generational thing. My generation, my brother, my sister, and myself, we all left home when we were 17 years old and never lived with our parents again. And believe me, I didn't want to. And we all loved our parents. My parents were wonderful people. They did a wonderful job raising me. I love my parents. They're both passed away. But, my brother and sister and I, we all loved our parents very, very much, and wanted to leave the house as soon as we possibly could, because we wanted to get out in the world. We wanted to live, right? So, like I said, when we were 17, we graduated from high school when we were 17, and that was it. We never moved back with our folks. So, that's why I lived in Japan all those years. I love my parents, and I'd come back to the U.S. for vacation and see them and that kind of thing. But it's my life, yeah? And a good parent should recognize it's your life. Now, Chinese family structures are different. I understand that very well. Okay, so the family dynamic in China is different, and I understand that in Chinese culture. But nevertheless, you have to balance the should and the want, okay? The responsibility that you have to your family and the responsibility you have to yourself, and that's something that you have to discuss with your family. And that's your birth family. Now, when it comes to the other family, if you have a partner, then, that's a more difficult situation. I'll be honest with you, and I have no problems talking about my own life. My wife and I have been married for 44 years, and we've lived together for 20 years, and we've lived apart for 24 years, because she was at Harvard, she worked at Harvard, I was working in Japan. Our daughters were growing up in Japan, then they went to the U.S., and we're like moving around all the time, and that's our family. And that's, we have a great family and all this kind of stuff, but we have our separate lives. My wife and I have our separate lives, my daughters have their lives, and we're all great friends. And we text each other all the time and get together once in a while and this kind of thing. But that's the personal decision. I can't, that is particularly something I can't tell you, only you can tell you. But with the family, with your birth family, yes, I understand in Chinese families that, that relationship is different than it is in the United States, less independent, if you will. So, you just got to make that determination between what you need to do as an individual and what you need to do as a member of your family. And that I can't answer. Anybody else? Okay. Thank you all very much for coming.